So, Aldo, tell us, why have you chosen The Good Life as your standout track from Pinkerton?
The Good Life was the first song I ever heard off the album. It was the first video I saw off of the album, though El Scorcho was the first single, and that was the first video that was made.
Mhm.
But The Good Life was the first one I watched, and I feel like at a time when I was watching a lot of 120 minutes, they would play that video a lot.
The scans.
And then right. And then going back to that to the body thing, I mean, I lyrically again, it took me a while to connect with some of these songs, but The Good Life was one that I understood at a very young age.
Mm.
Like I struggled with my body a lot when it came to like chronic pain, discomfort, and I mean I still do. And so give you a little bit of a backstory on The Good Life. Rivers was going through this intense surgery for his leg because one of his legs was shorter than the other.
Yeah.
So basically, what they did was they broke his femur in two,
Oh,
and in
God.
and then they drilled these nails into his bone. And so every day he had to turn these these mechanisms in his leg to essentially extend his femur bone.
Oh my God.
Um, he had some crazy complications with it where it wasn't taking. They had to like remove another piece of bone from his hip and then attach it to his femur
Oh.
and then continue the process all over again. And finally it took, and long story short, he's living a great life. His body's doing wonderful.
He's living the good life, isn't he?
And he's living the good life.
Zing.
I'll see myself out.
But the good life was essentially him lamenting, some form of like able body that he had, and
Mhm.
now feeling, a little withered, and something about not getting around without an old man cane.
Yeah.
Um,
He falls and hits the ground.
yeah, bitter and cold, shivering alone.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember did I send you guys that picture of, there's a Facebook picture of me and Mike when the one and only time that I actually met Mike in person. There is a Facebook picture of that. And if you can see clearly, I'm walking with a cane.
Did you send this to us?
He sent it to our like main account, but you probably couldn't access it via Facebook.
Oh.
I'll download it and send it to you, Tyler.
Okay, great.
Okay, yeah.
Man.
Were you
That
able
was
to see it, Mike?
it was like when I came to visit in Seattle, right?
Yeah. I think it was I don't know,
Well,
05,
I won't remember the year at all.
Lord, yeah, that's a long time.
I do remember. So the thing that I remember from that trip, there are many things I remember from that trip. Aside from, I feel like we watched a Greg Araki film at some point during that. I also am pretty sure this will tell us the year. I'm pretty sure you two were playing Silver Sun Pickups Carnivus in the car a lot, because that's when I
Nice.
first heard Lazy Eye, if I'm not mistaken.
so
God,
what that
what a
was,
song.
I mean, what an album.
Yeah, great album.
But that must have been like 06?
I'll check. You resume
Yeah.
you resume your story. I'll
Yeah.
check.
You were walking with a cane, huh?
And I was walking with a cane. So
Yeah.
so I always really kind of understood that song in all of its glory, and
Sure.
now getting older too, I hear all my friends kind of complaining about their bodies, and they're like, oh, I can't get up without like having to stretch or, do something.
Mhm.
Like, oh, welcome my life in the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah. Well, I think it'd be easy for somebody to hear this song and not know the context of that, to say, what is this guy, 20, 25 years old, and he's talking about being an old man? What does he know about being an old man? But then when you really look at it in the context of that scenario that he was in, it's genuinely debilitating.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing the details of it is, it's intense. It's intense.
Yeah, you just articulating the process of him reconstructing his legs. I'll give you 300,000 points for it, but that turned my stomach, my friend. That is a
It was
crazy
a painful.
Yeah, we'll
It was
say
a painful
300,000 for Rivers' leg. Rest in peace.
I don't want to know. Anytime I get a medical procedure done, I don't want to know what's happening. Just do it. Like,
Yeah,
just
I
do
get
it and
that.
don't tell me.
I'm the opposite. I want to know everything.
That doesn't surprise me about you. We've known each other for what, an hour, and I still that doesn't surprise me at all about you. I can just tell.
I'm glad I'm transparent at least then. That's good.
Yeah, totally. I think this is such a fun song. Like it really is. It is a party song, which makes it feel,
rocks.
yeah, it's anthemic. You can sing it. You can sing the best Weezer songs you can sing along to, right? That's I think it's one of the best parts of their it's one of their main powers.
I saw them once live for the Green album, and they had a couple of Maladroit songs that they were playing in the set. There was this random guy that was standing next to us, and there's two songs specifically I remember us singing along to. It was "Say It Ain't So" and "Why Bother."
Great songs, yeah.
Later, I found out that he doesn't really speak English at all. Like, I think he was from Argentina or Venezuelan, but he knew all the words. And when "Why Bother" came on, he put his arm around me, and we sang that song and jumped up and down. He sang it with such fervor that I was like, man, what did this man go through? Because somebody had done something to him.
I hope he's okay.
to him to feel this song as strongly as he did. But that's the best part about Weezer is that anthemy kind of sing along, which makes sense that they go into this like anthem rock type of theme after a while. And I got to be honest, I wouldn't consider myself like the biggest Weezer fan. In going through some of my research for this, I had no idea how many albums they had released.
So many.
Oh, it's insane.
Yeah.
The number of like, oh my, one for each season in 2022, right, or something like that.
Yeah, there was the season ones. Well, because I had heard that they'd done the Africa cover. Was it
which was
last
fun.
year?
Yeah, that was fun.
I think isn't it like the Teal album is all covers or something like that?
It's all covers. Yeah. And I thought it was a lot of fun. I really liked that cover.
All right, I got a question about this album. we haven't dug into the Madame Butterfly situation. We haven't talked about the cover of the album, which is sort of interpolating. I don't know if I would use interpolating, riffing, or sort of stealing a Japanese painting. There's many references to Japan throughout the album, and I this time with my set of 2024 ears, listening to the song "Across the Sea" was a little bit of a strange experience for me. So I wondered if you wanted to speak to any of that in terms of like what's, not that I'm asking you to like defend whatever was going on with Rivers at the time, but like I don't know, like if this is going to be, you know, if you're putting this up for consideration for an album that goes to 11, I would argue some things about this album like give me pause, like on the appropriation side of things, on the legal age side of things. Like I'm just curious to know how, like, were you aware of any of that at the time, or like now when you're re-listening to it, does any of it strike you differently, or are you just sort of like, you know what, the music's the music and that's it?
You can't help but to have a few cringe moments in the album for sure. I mean, not only Across the Sea, but there's some problematic things with Love, Pink Triangle as well.
Yep. One
thing I did want to share is that you asked me for a few albums, right? And I did give you a list of a number of albums, and Pinkerton was actually the last one that I listed.
Oh.
It was the last one that I put on there. And when you had sent me like, oh, hey, we're going to talk about Pinkerton, I was kind of like, oh, really?
Really?
I wanted to talk about the other album.
Oh, hey, you know, that's we understand that is that there is a risk we take in disappointing you as our guest, that we would choose one of your less preferred albums. But hey, we have a season to program. We appreciate you nonetheless nonetheless giving it your all here.
No, and I appreciate I put it on my short list anyway, right? So
Yeah, totally.
I had to pick it. So re-listening to it after a few years, like, yeah, there were some moments where I was like, oh, this is, yeah.
Sure.
Going back to the story of where Rivers' head was at, and really dissecting the lyrics, truly. He definitely has admitted that he has noticed a preference in his patterns, and some of this was kind of like addressing some of those preferences of patterns. I mean, there is a long history of, specifically white heterosexual men sexualizing Asian women. There's a little bit of a lamentness and sort of like he knows that it's kind of weird. Even in Across the Sea, one of the lines is I know, or like, I wish I could touch you, or but I know it would be wrong. So he knows that there's something off about this lamenting that he has for this preference. And I think that the references to Madame Butterfly specifically, like that, I mean, he was really obsessed with this opera at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And it was really like this girl that he liked in Harvard that was really obsessed with the opera. And so he kind of got like really obsessed about it too. And kind of in his obsession realized that he in a lot of ways, like, he is the character of Pinkerton.
Yeah, should we give a little bit like an overview of the story for anybody who's not familiar with the well, it's an opera. It came out in the early 1900s and it's by Puccini and it's based on a short story, right? So make if y'all could fact check me, that'd be great here. But
I think that's right. Yeah.
yeah, and it's about an American named B.F. Pinkerton who he goes to Japan and he takes a young girl to wife, um, leaves her impregnated, and then bails, and then comes back with an American wife towards the end of the play or towards the end of the opera. Those are there's a lot more that happens, but in terms of like understanding the context of why this opera itself is considered controversial. I'm no opera guy. I'm trying to widen my experience and palette in that space as well. But am I understanding correctly kind of like the synopsis of that opera?
And he addresses that in Butterfly, the last track of the album as well.
Yeah.
Talking about, being sorry about infidelities that he's had, and sort of like his process of dealing with that inner Pinkerton, working as this rock star, and how he can come out a bit better, I think, because it's introspective. It's part of that. It's part of that ugly vulnerability that, there's things that people don't want to admit. And he's just kind of like, yeah, this is where my mind is, and it's not all great. It is kind of fucked up, but I'm trying to work through it.
Yeah.
And here are a few songs about how, or why I'm trying to work through this.
I think it does feel almost apologetic in some moments, and there is a lamenting and feeling like there is amends to be made for some of these predilections.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many rock songs about young girls, very unapologetic about it, like glorifying it. I don't get that sense in any of these songs that he's necessarily like glorifying any of these feelings.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, I think you can really look at specifically like Across the Sea is just like, I am a grown man who is like searching for connection with a teenage girl who lives, thousands of miles away.
Mm-hmm.
I know nothing about. And like that's how strived I am for connection right now, is that's where I'm looking for that. Funny thing about that song is that the fan is a real person. Apparently she receives residuals because he lifted like specific lines from the letter that she sent him.
Interesting.
Huh.
I kind of like that. Like somebody's being compensated for their labor. I'll give pro labor river gets 3 million points.
But also, to clarify for our listeners too, like with that song Across the Sea, I mean, like, okay, two things. One, what you're saying about like, yeah, there's a lot of other bands that they do sing about girls like that, and I mean, but this isn't like Warrant singing Cherry Pie, right? Like it's not he's not
No.
objectifying her in the same way. But also, dear listeners, just so you're aware, if you haven't heard the song Across the Sea, early on in the lyrics, he does clarify that the person he's talking about is 18 years old. I just want to put that out there just to like make sure that's established in case any listeners have been kind of like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Yeah. Like he does say that towards the very, very beginning of the song. So
yeah.
To further contextualize the reason I'm interested in talking about this as well is that I loved this album growing up, and as a ostensibly straight cisgendered guy in the Midwest, really found a connection to this sort of the frustration that was in these lyrics, just being like, what am I? What is this meat suit? Like you said, I love meat suit. Anytime a meat suit can be referenced, I'm happy. But I think there's another, if we could take it to Pink Triangle for a second, the synopsis of Pink Triangle, right, is that he falls in love with a lesbian, and he's finding out, he's like, oh, I think it's funny that he's like, it must be because she's a lesbian that she doesn't like me, right? Because it couldn't be for any other reason, which, this is not new criticism of that song, but it is one of those things that listening to it again, I'm like, oh, yeah, still kind of silly.
Oh, the sillier part of Pink Triangle is that, well, okay, so he says that this album is about 90% autobiographical.
Okay.
Which honestly really just means that he probably just changed a few chronological things and maybe added a few characters here and there, but mostly autobiographical, which means that there was a person for Pink Triangle. But it turns out that this girl was just an ally. She was just sporting a pink triangle on her jacket, and he assumed that she was a lesbian, and so he wrote this song. And after the song was released, she confronted him and was like, "Hey, was this song about me?" And he's all like, "Yeah." She's like, "Yeah, I'm not gay."
Good for her.
I'm just an ally.
There you go. Okay, I'm validated then. I'm validated. This makes the story even better. I'm going to name her Phoebe. Okay, Phoebe gets 9 million points for setting the record straight. 9 million points, Aldo.
Well, Aldo, we've asked you, I mean, you already alluded to the fact that we asked you to provide us with a list of albums that you thought were perfect. And we'd like to know more about how you define that word. And if you want to mention some other albums, you can get those out there. If you want people to know some of the other ones on your list, that can be part of your case if you want to.
We won't say no.
It's okay. It's all right. But just wondering, like, how did you come up with this list? What were your standards for perfection?
At the end of the day, perfection is in the eye of the beholder, right? I think we all kind of have our different standards of what perfection is, and for me that changes with different moods. Like, what's the perfect album to listen to on a Sunday morning? What's the perfect album to listen to on a run? What's the perfect album to listen to when I'm sad? So then when I like whittle it down to 100. I have to really think about like, well, what are some of the basics, like just basics of what I would consider a perfect album. And for me, a big thing is unskippability. I started listening to music on cassette tapes. And if you've listened to music on cassette tapes, you know how hard it is to skip a song, to find like the perfect spot where that song ends and where the other one begins. Or when you outplay a song on a cassette tape and it starts to warp and starts to sound all weird. So for me, a big thing was to just listen to it all the way through. Abbey Road being like one of the first albums I feel like I could listen to all the way through, except for frickin' Octopus's Garden. Had to just like wedge itself in the middle of
Oh, you
that
don't
A
love that one?
side.
Come on, it's fun. It's fun. We need Octopus's Garden, don't we? Isn't it necessary?
Yes, Ringo's silliness, I think, in my later years has been a little less annoying. And I think, yeah, definitely more appropriate when John can be so serious and, but still, yeah, I don't know, something about Octopus's Garden didn't rub me right. But that second B-side, that B-side of Abbey Road, I mean, talk about like one of the most perfect 20 minutes of music that you can just like listen to and not, just let it ride. So, a lot of albums can do that for me. The Driving album, I mean, I was in high school in the early 2000s, and The Love Below, I think, was like one of those albums that just, oof, that lived in my car CD case booklet. And that one got a good amount of scratches on it too.
Referencing Speakerbox The Love Below by Outkast, everyone, for anyone out there who might be wondering.
True classic. And then something that's, I think timeless is a funny word, because I feel like something can be of the time and also timeless. And I think Pinkerton can be that, because it has that sound of the early 90s. I can still listen to it now and feel different things and relate to different songs in different ways because of my life experience. One of the songs that stand out to me now that never did before was No Other One. Listening to it at first glance, it's almost like a waltz, and the chorus is very like nice and pleasant. But then when you really like dive into the lyrics, you're like, man, this is a very toxic relationship that he's talking about.
Yeah.
Like these people do not need to be with each other, but just because they're drawn with the fear of being alone, it's really the only thing that's bringing them together. And I've recently experienced a breakup that really can put me into that space like I've never been put in before.
There's nothing like music when you're heartbroken, huh?
Nothing like music when you're heartbroken. Nothing like music when you're falling in love. Nothing like music when you're inspired, when you're deflated. It's the remedy for all.
So it's environmental for you, huh? It's circumstantial. That's where the perfection lies?
Yeah, I think so. I think so, because our ears change too.
Yeah.
I know that there was things that I would try to listen to at an earlier age that I was like, oh, I can't.
Totally.
I can't hang with this.
Yeah.
Like Octopus's Garden.
Yeah, a perfect example. Yeah, it takes us a while to get an artist, right? Like sometimes it took me forever with Dylan. I've mentioned this on the pod before, I think, but like I just did not get him for a long time. But I think I had a moment of revelation where I was like, oh, I think I see what he's trying to do.
And I'll be honest with you, I'm still not there with Dylan. And maybe I will get there, and maybe I won't. But I think circumstance, I think people too, the people that you have in your lives, they'll influence the way you listen to music, what you listen to. If it wasn't for certain friends of mine, there'd probably be genres of music that I would never have explored.
Very good friends to have. Well, I wanted to just say that I'm grateful you brought this one. You brought this one because it was a blast from the past and an album that I have had a great love for in my life, and I hadn't listened to it in a long time. So I was happy that it ended up on the season, and you've spoken really beautifully about this. You've touched on all the necessary points, but at the end of the day, it does come down to those points. The cold hard cash in the bank that you have deposited while making your case. So we're going to count up those points that you made, Aldo. We're going to see if you did a good enough job for this album to be included in the Pantheon. All right. So with the most recent points I gave you, 900,000 points for Phoebe setting the record straight about the pink triangle. I'm just an ally. Doesn't mean I'm a lesbian. Okay? 3 million points for River giving residuals to one of the author of that letter. The author of that letter, we appreciate you compensating people fairly for their labor, River. That's a good thing to do. There was 300,000 points for your poor damn leg and all the pain that you had to go through while making this album. Holy moly. 5 million points for your Columbia House guitar, Aldo. That is a fine piece of work. That looks very loved. I love when a guitar looks loved. 6,000 points for the VH1's early aughts programming and all the influence it had on sounds like your musical taste, but certainly mine as well. And you get 1 million points for being a music slut. Good for you. Thank you. Thank you for your service.
The best points out there.
Yeah, those are the most valuable ones. They're really worth like 3 times your normal points. 900,000 points for your point about detachment leading to peace and sort of how that relates to music in your life and just your story overall. It's been a great story. So you gave me 3,000 points for my my effort at a 60-second intro. It was an effort this week.
Your overtime win. Let's call it an overtime win.
My 3,000 points for my overtime win. I thank you for that. I should spin that positively. And all in all, this is looking like a very strong board. But although around here, decisions are made by one man. He's the final word. And it comes from Michael Osinski. Michael, you heard the case that Aldo made. Tell us, is Pinkerton by Weezer a perfect album? Does it go to 11?
I mean, I don't know how I can say no. I mean, I think we threw you a few curveballs on this one. I think you handled them ably, and I'm glad I got to to re-listen to an album from my past as well. So yeah, I think Weezer's Pinkerton can join the pantheon. It goes to 11.
Yay!
Yes. Well done.
So, although I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but we also choose our own standout track from the album. Are you curious to know what we have chosen as ours?
I am. I actually, I really wanted to strategically pick mine, but I was so attached to it that I was like, no, gotta let go of trying to control everything and let them pick whatever they were gonna pick. So, yes, I want to hear. What did you guys pick?
We there was a little discussion, and we could have gone a multitude of different directions, but we decided to go with the first single, El Scorcho.
Yes.
Great song. Just it's a very Weezer song, and I think especially it sounds a little different from everything in that I think it sounds a little bit more like the Blue Album and the Green Album than some of the other songs on here. That was a feeling I had. I'm not sure if either of you would agree with that. Yeah.
Definitely.
Great guitars. It cuts loose. There's a weird line about half Japanese girls that has aged somewhat poorly, but also it's kind of like it was a function of its time. It's just a great song. Michael, what made you feel like this was the direction to go?
I mean, two things. One, this is a nerdy song to me.
Oh,
like
yeah.
this feels like the nerdiest song on the album, and so of course I'm going to gravitate towards that. But also, the video for this is so locked in my brain, not only because of because of the fact that it exists, but also this was on my Mark Romanek music video director DVD. Because I don't know if it's Romanek or Romanek, I'm not sure. But dear listeners, if you listened to my Back to One episode from last week, I talked about these music video director DVDs, and the Mark Romanek one, that's got some real classics. And this was directed by him, and I cannot hear this song without picturing the crazy colored lights, and the band's name that keeps changing and spelling over time, and also all the lighting changes are so perfectly synced up with things. They found all the little weird things that happen in the song, and he catches them visually throughout the whole thing. So it's impossible for you not to know the song inside and out if you've seen the video for it. So yeah, this is a no-brainer.
This was my second choice. It was between The Good Life and El Scorcho. Yeah, so I'm glad that you guys picked it. And funny thing is that so they represented the album to Geffen Records, and they loved it, and they picked El Scorcho to be their first single, precisely because it sounded so much like the Blue Album. And funny thing is that originally they wanted Spike Jonze to direct that video naturally.
Naturally, yeah.
But Rivers refused because he didn't want like another gimmicky video, because that's what Spike Jonze was giving him, like another Buddy Holly.
Yeah.
He wanted something more intimate, just like the band playing. And I'm so glad that like you picked up on all those, because the lighting cues with the music, if you can see beyond it just being a performance video, like there are some really nice pieces to it for sure.
Aldo, it's been great to meet you. What a treat. And just in other figures from Michael's life, building the tapestry of this quirky modern "this one goes to 11" family that we have. We couldn't be happier that you were able to make it today.
This was a blast. I just love talking about music with people. I was really looking forward to this, and this is a lot of fun. I'm so open to doing this again too.
All right, good to know.
That sounds. I mean, maybe you can explain Bad Bunny to me. That would be.
Yes.
Oh my
God! Please.
Someone has to. We want it all. We want to do it all.
All right. Well, yeah. Thanks, Aldo, for doing this, and thank you everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I guess we'll see you next week.
Bye.